Let's do a story about a horse today. This story is called Black Beauty and it is taken from the book Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. So, by the name, you can guess that it is the story of a beautiful black horse. This is an extract from the book and it has been adapted. It has been changed so that you can understand it better. For those who are new here, I'm Milane from English Made Easy. This channel is dedicated to creating easy and interesting lessons so that you can improve your English in an enjoyable way. And if you have not already subscribed to my channel, please do so. That way, you will get notified each time I post new content. And if you like animal stories, I'm sure you will like this one. It's a video that I did recently about a bear. It's a bear story, so do watch it when you have time. But today, we will do this short, interesting story about a beautiful black horse. And I have a lot of questions for you to answer. A lot of questions at the end of each page and also at the end of the entire lesson. So, watch this video very carefully. Listen to the story very carefully. Only by doing so will you be able to answer every single question that I have for you. And then at the end of each page, I will also tell you the answers. So you can test yourself. You can know whether you have understood that part of the lesson well or not. And if you have not understood it well and not got all the answers right, I suggest that you read through that part again, over and over again, because the best way to do well in English literature is to read. Read over and over until you are absolutely certain that you have understood that part of the text very well. So, are you ready to listen to this part of the story well? Listen carefully, and you will not only improve your comprehension skills, but also your spelling, pronunciation, reading, vocabulary, and everything else. Listening to a story in English is a great way to improve your English and an interesting way. So, are you ready? Shall we begin? So, here's the story Black Beauty, adapted from the book Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Here are the new words that you might come across in this part of the lesson. I'm really sorry about the background noise. Rushes, which means tall plants with grass like leaves. Plowed, which means dug with a plow. Plantation, which is a large area of land that is planted with trees. And goodwill, which means friendly or helpful feelings. So now let's start with the first part of the lesson Black Beauty. I'm going to read this part to you. Please listen very carefully. I will explain it to you and then we will do the questions that follow. The first thing you need to do is listen very carefully and try and understand the text while I read it to you. The first place I can remember was a large, pleasant meadow with a pond of clear water in it. Some shady trees leaned over it. Rushes and water lilies grew at the deep end. Over the hedge on one side, we looked into a ploughed field, and on the other, we looked over a gate at our master's house, which stood by the roadside. So, what does this mean? Who's telling the story? Black Beauty is telling the story. The horse is telling the story. The horse whose name was Black Beauty. So, Black Beauty says that the first thing he can remember is a large, pleasant meadow and that meadow had a pond of clear water in it. There were some shady trees that leaned over the pond, and at the deep end of the pond, there were rushes and water lilies. When Black Beauty looked over the hedge on one side, he could see a plowed field, and when he looked over a gate at the other side, he could see their master's house, and the house stood by the roadside. And now, if you have understood this part of the lesson very well, you should be able to answer all these questions that follow. Let's see if you can. Describe the meadow in 2 words. What are the 2 words that you can use to describe the meadow? Large and pleasant. It's right here. The meadow had a dash in it. Was it a river, a lake, or a pond? Pond is the right answer. The flowers that grew at the deep end were roses, water lilies, or lilies? Water lilies. Here. There was a dash on one side of the meadow and the dash dash on the other side. Field and master's house here. A plowed field and master's house on the other side. Let's move on to the next paragraph. In the daytime, I ran by my mother's side, and at night I laid down close to her. When it was hot, we used to stand by the pond in the shade of the trees. When it was cold, we had a nice warm shed near the plantation. As soon as I was old enough to stay on my own, my mother used to go out to work in the daytime and come back in the evening. So Black Beauty was very young and he did not leave his mother's side. During the daytime, he walked beside his mother or ran by his mother's side the whole time. And when it was night, he lay down next to her. When it was hot, Black Beauty and his mother would stand by the pond in the shade of the trees. And when it was cold, they had a nice warm shed near the plantation. As soon as Black Beauty grew a little bit and he was old enough to stay on his own, his mother went to work in the daytime and she would return only in the evening. Now let's see if you can answer these questions. When it was hot, the horses stood by the river, lake, or pond? Pond. See? Pond. When it was cold, the horses went into a bed, a shed, or a bathtub. Found it? Shed. The shed was near the plantation, the sea, or the bus stop. Plantation, right here. Black Beauty's mother went to work and only returned in the daytime, evening, or night time. Evening. See? In the evening. Let's move on. There were 6 young colts in the meadow besides me. They were older than I was. Some were nearly as large as grown-up horses. I used to run with them. We had great fun. We used to canter round and round the field as hard as we could go. Sometimes we had a rather rough play, for the colts would bite and kick as well as gallop. Understood that part? So there were 7 colts in the meadow because one was Black Beauty and there were 6 other colts besides him. They were all older than Black Beauty and some looked like grown-up horses even though they were colts, they were babies. Black Beauty used to play with them, he used to run with them and have great fun with them. He says that they used to canter round and round the field as hard as they could go. And sometimes their play became rather rough. They would be rough, and all the colts would bite and kick and gallop. Understood that part? Let's see if you can get the questions right. There were dash young colts in the meadow besides Black Beauty, 6, 7, or 8. 6. It says 6 here. Black Beauty was the youngest colt. Is that true or false? True, because he says they were older than I was. So he was the youngest. What are the three things the colts would do? Got it? Bite, kick, and gallop. Bite, kick, gallop. Okay, let's move on. One day, when there was a good deal of kicking, my mother whinnied to me to come to her, and then she said, I wish you pay attention to what I am going to say. Understood? One day, the colts had been kicking a lot, and Black Beauty's mother was watching them, and she did not like what she saw. So she called Black Beauty. She said, come here, I have something to say to you. And she told Black Beauty, now pay careful attention to what I am going to say. So, was Black Beauty's mother happy with all the rough behavior of the colts? No, not at all. The colts had been dash each other, hugging each other, licking each other, kicking each other. Easy one. Kicking each other. See? Kicking. Let's move on. The colts that live here are very good. Who's talking? Black Beauty's mother. She's telling Black Beauty all this. The colts that live here are very good, but some of them have not learnt manners. Your father has a great name. For 2 years, your grandfather won the Newmarket Race Cup. Your grandmother had the sweetest temper of any horse I ever knew, and you have never seen me kick or bite. I hope you will grow up gentle and good and never learn bad ways. Do your work with goodwill. Lift your feet up well when you trot and never bite or kick, even in play. So, here was Black Beauty's mother giving Black Beauty some very valuable advice. What did she say? She said, all your friends, the colts that are here, are really good. They're not bad. The only problem is that they have not yet learnt manners. Now she said, I don't want you to be like them. Why? Because your father has a great name and your grandfather has a good name too because for 2 years he won the Newmarket Race Cup. And your grandmother had the sweetest temper of any horse I ever knew. She never lost her temper. And she said, she asked Black Beauty to look at her. She said, look at me. Have you ever seen me kicking or biting anyone? No. So I don't want you to do these things either. I want you to grow up to be gentle and good and never learn bad ways. Do your work with goodwill. Lift your feet up well when you trot. And she said, do not bite or kick, even if you are joking, even if you're fooling around, even if you're playing, even if it is a game. Do not ever bite or kick. It's not a good thing. Good advice, right? Now let's see if you can answer the questions. Some of the colts had not learnt math, manners, or science. Manners, right here. Black Beauty's grandfather had won the Newmarket Race Cup for dash years 1, 2, or 3. 2. There. Black Beauty's grandmother had the sweetest smile, temper, or eyes. Temper. There. Black Beauty's mother told him never to bite or kick even in play, his sleep, or the shed. Play. There. Okay? So I have a few more questions for you to do based on that small part of the lesson that we did today. I will be doing the second part of the lesson tomorrow. But for today, please read this part of the lesson over and over again until you know it thoroughly. Let's see if you can answer these questions too before we end. The meadow was small, large, or on a lake. What's your answer? Large. The master's house stood by the roadside pond or grocery store. Roadside. A young male horse that is less than 4 years old is called a filly, gander, or colt. Colt. Horses canter and waddle, gallop, or glide. Gallop. Black Beauty's mother believed that the colts were bad, good, or ugly. Good. So, how did you do? Did you get almost all the answers right? If you did enjoy the lesson, don't forget to hit that like button before you end. And if you can think of any of your friends who might enjoy this lesson as well and benefit from it and learn from it, please share it with them. Also, one more thing before I end. Please let me know in the comments what your favorite part of the story is. What part of the story did you like best? And until we meet again, I'll say cheerio.